We are live, folks, and here comes Ms. Pena.
Thank you, Mr. Cornelius. All right, I will call this meeting of the Intergovernmental Legislative Relations Committee to order. We have Councilor Pena, Councilor Bassan, Mr. Griego, Mr. Padilla, and then I'm told that Mr. Rael is coming in just a few minutes. So before we move on to agenda item A, I mean, this could be just part of A, actually. I'll turn it over to Mr. Padilla to give us an update on the legislative priorities, communications with state legislature. Mr. Padilla, you are muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was asking Tom, would it be possible to allow me to share my screen?
Yeah, this Mr. Cornelius, could you go ahead and share screen with Mr. Padilla?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All set, Isaac.
Oh, I thought Councilor Pena was on. Did she drop off? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Pena. You moved on me. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody was here.
Okay, so this is what I'm planning to do is what I'd like to do is the next document I could discuss in council, and I'm just going to use District 7 as an example, is we would have the citywide, and then we'd have the citywide, can you see this? Councilor Friebelkorn, D7 requests, so that these are the additional requests that you would put in. And then we'd have other D7 requests that came after that are not citywide, so that it's obvious which is which, and so that the legislators know and their staff know the order, so that we try to minimize the confusion. The one thing I do want to, if is this okay? Does anyone have any questions, or based on this before I move forward?
Mr. Padilla, I do. So this will be listed as the City of Albuquerque priorities.
It'll be requests that'll go on there. So we'll have citywide requests. There'll be 3 separate pages, right? Or 3 different sections. So the first section would be citywide, what was called citywide inside the resolution. The next one are specific projects that you requested. So that was also in the resolution, or if you have any other ones that need to come up, that would be in Councilor Friebelkorn's request. And then I'm just calling these other requests, and I should probably change the name so it doesn't say District 7. I would change it to in District 7.
So my concern is that for the District 7 example, there are several on this page that are not in the citywide legislation that everyone agreed on. And Councilor Pena gave an example the other night of she's got additional priorities that are coming from her, but they were not in the piece of legislation that we passed. And I don't feel like they need to be included in something that's labeled as, city priorities.
Madam Chair, what I could do is, so for Councilor Pena's district, I believe she's District 1. No, she's 3. I could add it here, so it would just be the, I know that she's talking about the Unser Museum. I could add it in there, that so any additional stuff that came after, it'll be in this document. I can fill it all out so I can be sure that it's there.
Okay, so several of the ones on District 7 that are on the next tab are also requests that I put in, like Quigley Park, which was but it was not in the overall bill. And so I just want to make sure that we are not being, disingenuous here. I put in additional things. I think all the counselors, reserve the right to do that, but I don't want it to be upsetting if there are things that are not in the original list. I am fine with it just being the original list that is on the legislation. So I just open that up to other folks, other counselors to say what they think on that.
Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, if I am understanding correctly, on every page or whatnot, or I guess, or I'm assuming on every page, it's going to start with citywide, which is only what was in the approved resolution. And then there will be a secondary tab for district specific additional in addition to the citywide, or will it be duplicated if the council requested it?
Madam Chair, so, okay, let me see then, if you, so what I've created right now on this page, it has all the original, and then there's a couple more that the mayor wanted in. One of them is the
Mr. Peter, could you make it a bit small, a bit larger? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing the details, and it's going to be easier for me to follow along.
Madam Chair, I guess I'm not going to belabor this much more because it's becoming extremely exhausting, but I appreciate the work you're doing on this, Mr. Padilla. If the mayor is adding in something that is not on the approved resolution, I do not agree that it should be called a citywide priority.
Okay.
It can be in his own tab that says mayoral priority, just like it says District 7 requests, it can say mayoral requests. That's my opinion. I believe that he should not be, honestly, just more important than the rest of us when it comes to his priorities getting snuck in on something called citywide capital requests. He should have his own tab just like we do.
So then let me do this.
So if I can interject, Madam Chair, I think I'm in total agreement with both of you. I can't see it, so it's better bigger. And then, and then I agree with Councilor Bassan. What was suggested the other day was to have, if we're putting it in this book per se, or whatever it is, that what should be at the front of the book, whether it's the mayor's requests in addition to the ones, and I'm talking from the perspective of a mayor, right? His project should be in front. These are some of the mayor's priorities. Then the second tab should be, these are all the citywide priorities and no additional ones, not from me, not from him, not from anyone. That would be the second tab. Then the third tab would be this council specific additional priorities. And I think that really is, what we're all, and pardon me if I'm incorrect, but I think that's what we're trying to achieve.
Madam Chair, I agree with that completely.
Yes, me too. Thank you, Councilor Pena. So yeah, and thank you for making this a little larger, Mr. Padilla. I'm sorry, I can't read it even with my glasses on. So I appreciate your blowing it up a bit.
So then what I would do is I'll have a thing that says citywide. So University Area Command was not agreed on by the entire council as citywide. That is one that's it's a mayoral request. So what I can do is move this box so it says University Command. I can put it into the mayor's request. So the mayor's request here. Then we got the D7 requests. And then we got additional requests. And so the reason why I don't like these are additional requests is sometimes it's requests from legislators, sometimes it's requests from other people after the book was passed. So they're not necessarily all mayor's requests. They're coming from other places. So that's why I would call this one additional. So what we would have is 4 pages. Citywide.
Let me just jump in real quick on the District 7. The Cutler Park and the Girard Streetscaping are my requests. So those would be moved to my tab. Just to clarify, like those were in the original bill under my name.
Okay.
But I like the approach. So it's mayor, citywide, councilor's request, and then other specific requests within that district.
Council Chair, can I make a recommendation? Can we start with citywide, then go to the mayor, then go to councilors, then to others?
That would be my preference.
Okay, great.
Preference too, but I was trying to be fair to the mayor since he's the mayor of the city, but yeah, we'll put him second.
I mean, I do think there's rationale for that, right? I mean, the stuff that's in that citywide priority, the mayor likes, every single city councilor likes, those really should be what we are all leading with in my mind. And those are what I'm leading with, even if they're not my requests. When I'm talking to legislators, I'm going down that whole list. So I think that makes sense.
Okay, so then that's what I have it set up now. And the mayor's request, the additional one, I think there's one. There might only be one. But when I went through it all, it was the University Area Command. So that one came after, it was a little bit late. It's an important one because it's going to help with certain areas of the city and the university and stuff like that. So I can do that one. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. So that means on most of them, the citywide is just going to be what's in the thing, then the mayor's, which is just going to be one, maybe two. I'll have to go back and look again. Then we go council, then we go additional District 7. And we have that document. It's ready to go.
And then,
So-
Mr. Padilla, I appreciate that very much. And I would just request if you could send it to us, just let us look at our individual district lists before it goes live. Just because like I just saw a couple of things in mine and I saw that you were able to fix those on the fly, but I'd like to make sure that the other counselors give a chance to just look through the list, make sure that we're all on the same page before this is sent out.
Okay, and one of the, thank you that I'm at, Chair. Yes, I can do that. So now it is going to be a little more complicated because when I do the search, I'm going to have to search for councilors request, and then I'm going to have to do a search for the legislative stuff. So yeah, as soon as we can get that up and running, the better, because then we can actually make the changes whenever I need to produce the document, because this is for the legislators, right? But I want to be sure we get it right. When we're producing those documents, then we'll be able to break it. Once all the titles and all of that stuff is correct, we can then send it out to, we can use Excel to do that. So what I'll do is I'll work with Tom and Akuchi. Would it be possible to send all the requests to him that are yours so that me and him walk through each one of the cells and we identify it properly? This right here just kind of gives you an idea what we're going to do. This is based right now. If I was going to get this document to Councilor Feeblecorn, this is the way it would look if it was just your stuff. But I need to go and make every one of the fields correct so I can produce a document like this. Produce the 4 documents for the legislators. I know it's kind of weird, but it's like a strange thing that happens with Excel.
Yeah, I understand that. I would like to have it sent. You can send it to Mr. Micucci, but I would like to see the entire list at some point. I mean, we have other counselors besides the 2 that are on here that will look for their district, but I would like the chance to look at all the other districts to just make sure that overall we are representing all of the counselors' priorities correctly. And I can do that pretty quickly if you send it our way.
Okay, what I can do is I'll get the entire list. Once I get it cleaned up, it should be after this meeting. I'll email it to Tom, to Mr. Minicucci.
Thank you so much.
And Madam Chair,
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say to Isaac too, I mean, I think this is going to create a little bit more work, but usually what I do is just because we've been trying to narrow down just a citywide proposal, right? And each counselor, like I mentioned earlier, is on their own in terms of theirs. And I know you had requested, it's my understanding that you had requested that we put in all our requests. I typically don't, but I think if we're getting as detailed as we are, I think I'll definitely have Rachel send you over my entire list.
Okay,
Madam Chair, usually what we'll do when we get on our end is we'll take the tabs and break them out and then ship them to each analyst. So we'll also do that to verify it. But I think the question is, Isaac, if we do that, how quick do the analysts need to get it back to us? Because we'll go through it with you, but because they're also doing a lot on their own. So
I was planning on taking a Monday, but I can wait till Tuesday.
okay, so we'll ship it this afternoon, but we'll call and let the analysts know they need to review it and get it back to us Monday.
And then, yeah, and then once we have that done, we can break it out. And then, but like once the whole list is completed and we have the cells filled the way that they should be filled, we can then move forward.
Okay.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Padilla. I really appreciate it. Oh, there's a question, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's not a question. For the life of me, I can't figure out how to use the chat. I can't find the chat feature, but Mr. Jaramillo is trying to get in. So if somebody would admit him, please.
Mr. Cornelius, do you see him trying to get in?
I do not. I'm wondering if maybe he got an old Zoom meeting, maybe from last week, but I do not see him.
I will send him my link, Madam Chair, and if you'll just keep a lookout for him, that'd be great.
Thank you for letting us know, Mr. Thompson. Okay, Mr. Padilla, do we have agreement on next steps and anything else that we need to do on this?
Yes, we do.
All right, great. Thank you so much for all your work on that.
Now there's,
Let's move
Madam-
on to item A, which I think is kind of a continuation of this conversation, but we're going to move to the 2023 legislative session report
Madam
from
Chair?
city consultant lobbying team. And I will turn it over to Mr. Thompson because I don't see Mr. Jaramillo yet.
Madam
Chair,
Chair,
I have
Yes.
one more problem, Madam Chair. This is Isaac.
Oh, yes.
I don't know how to stop sharing my screen.
And I don't know how to make you stop sharing your screen. So let's see if Mr. Cornelius can help us.
it should be at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, there it
There
is.
we
Okay, I
go.
expanded it. Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. I want to say before I get started that I owe Councilor Pena a call. And so I'm sorry I have not reached out to you yet. My apologies. And then, it's been a very, very interesting first few days, some major changes, not just with the new speaker, but with the new chair of appropriations. And so I think that will affect everything. I think we will see some major changes. So I'm not sure that it'll affect the budget as it came out of LFC, but it certainly will affect the budget going forward. And so it's just something to be tuned in on. If you look at the composition for House appropriations, it's significantly different than it was in the past. There are a couple of notable, like Meredith Dixon from Albuquerque is the vice chair. So that's great for us to have someone of that caliber and Albuquerque connection as a vice chair. So that's something that I know Councilor Grout, we had met with Representative Dixon, and that was awesome. So there's some opportunities that I think are created by some of these new appointments. So we'll be sending out to Mr. Menicucci and everyone the total list, and then you can look at it. If you have any questions, please call. I was over at the Capitol today talking with them about capital outlay. There's still major questions internally as to how they're going to go about trying to manage the whole glut of requests being made. Yesterday, they had the first hearing on, I'd mentioned last week on the call that there were going to be hearings on capital outlay. Yesterday, they had the first one, and it was on higher ed. And I don't want to say it was a dud because it wasn't a dud, but they weren't sweeping money as a result of that meeting. So that to me is like, it's part of a provocative conversation that we should participate in wholeheartedly, but I think we should approach it with confidence. And, we've been doing the best we could. I think we have a great team. Certainly the mayor's background as auditor and the instruction that he gives all of us, I think have prepared us well for these types of meetings. But, that is something we need to prepare for. And then I think we will be getting more direction in the coming days on some other opportunities that might be being created. 2 or 3 years ago, there was a junior bill that was specific to transportation. And I don't know if you've all seen, but Representative Day Hockman Vigil, who's a huge champion for the city of Albuquerque, is now the chair of transportation. So that creates an opportunity for us. I mean, when they did that junior bill last time, we crushed it. We got much more than our share of that money. And that's because we had projects that were ready down in the neighborhood level. And so in anticipation of that, I think we should be thinking that maybe there might be another one of those or something like it that we can go compete for. As it relates specifically to capital outlay, we have so many new members. And so the dilemma they're facing is, how do they get members to pull projects into their universes? And that is something that I think it's going to resemble more like it did 3 or 4 years ago when we used to go around and have members sign the individual sheets. I think it will be comparable to that, although there won't be a signature process. they were tinkering with saying if any project is located within someone's district, then it automatically is in their universe. I heard this morning they're not going to do that. I don't know if that's true. Obviously, there's a lot of rumors, but in short, we've got some work to do to make sure that we've got everything, all of our ducks in a row. So we're putting our best foot forward for consideration. And then as I get that type of information, I will pass it along to everyone. I'll stand for questions if anyone has any.
Counselor Bassan.
Madam Chair, Mr. Thompson, do we have any numbers yet?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair and Councilor Bassan. I gave them at the last meeting, and I don't have them written down in front of me, but roughly it's just under $2 million for a House member, and I think it's like 3.7, 3.6 for a senator. And then there's also a $50 million junior that amounts to, you know, a couple $100,000 to just for House members and 350 some for senators. And that in the past, we've used that junior money for a variety of reasons. We have not used it to create anything that creates a recurring obligation, but we have used it we've used it for construction. We've used it for all sorts of things to kickstart things. So I think it's pretty wide open. I'm certain that there will be a junior bill. I was told there will be a junior bill by the LFC staff. And I think that's something that we should be prepared to compete on. I can tell you that is, you know, that kind of money is like gold, right? Because it can technically go for salaries or it can go to pay people, and it's not just for bricks and mortar. So it's a very competitive process. But because it's non-recurring, you do see some folks wanting to use it for bricks and mortar.
Mr. Padilla.
Or Isaac, you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Thompson, if there is going to be a reversion bill, do you think it's going to include or a bill that sweeps everything? Do you think it's going to include any type project that has a reversion date of 2023, or do you think it's going to be just the ones earlier?
Madam Chair and Mr. Padilla, I don't think there's going to be a reversion bill. Or if there is one, I think it's going to be on projects that are like acknowledged that are not tracking or not going to get done. But I don't think it will just be based upon the year of appropriation or the fact that it's up for reauthorization.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I just saw that you had snuck in, Mr. Rael. Would you like to take over the meeting, please?
No, you can continue. You're doing an awesome job. Thank you very much, though. I was just going to ask Mr. Thompson a question about this this committee that they're now are listening to appropriations and or are listening to the projects. I understand that we're tapped to be up there next week, and any insight of what you think we might prepare for? We've got our folks getting all the information together, but any insight would be helpful.
Madam Chair and Mr. Rael, I will provide you with that, because I went to the hearing yesterday and it was nothing like people were afraid of. First of all, they did not got to very few projects. And the instruction from Chairman Munoz at the end of it was, we may have our staff reach out with some additional questions. So it wasn't the inquisition that I feared. And one of the effective things that I did see is some pre-meeting going on with some of the key members, which is something we might consider, where if we have projects that either have a very unique story to tell, or we have projects that we absolutely cannot afford to lose, then we might consider those pre-meetings with some of the key members and staff, which I'm happy to coordinate.
Okay, that's very helpful, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Joe. I think that there's probably a handful of those unique projects that have a little bit of a twist to them that we probably want to make sure we talk to legislators about them. So I'll visit with our folks to make sure that they identify those to you so that we can. Let me ask you this one last question. So do you think that the presentation, if we send, for example, Mr. Montoya and Mr. Motzko, who run our capital program, that is of enough significance of rank, if you will? Don't want to insult anybody's at the legislature as it relates, or do I need to send, or do I need to go, or do I, or should our counselors go, or what do you think?
Madam Chair, Mr. Rael, I would say it is totally appropriate and they're the perfect people to attend.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Thompson? I think Mr. Jaramillo is on. Mr. Jaramillo, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can. If you want to go ahead and give us your update, now would be a good time.
Well, okay, I was technical difficulties. I don't know why I was not being let in for 20 minutes and then now I am in. Let's see, start my video. Hold on. Sorry. Well, you're just going to have to hear my voice. Sorry, I apologize for that. By way of, there's not much that has happened. I mean, there's politically, obviously, lots has happened since our last IGR. I'm sure Mr. Thompson covered most of that. In terms of the policy work that we're working on, we still have components of the metropolitan, the MCI, the crime initiative, that probably I think there's at least 5 bills that will be dropped by different members. The metropolitan redevelopment area bill will be dropped this week as well. We're just expecting those things to start moving through the Senate. They're going to be mostly in the Senate, is where the action will be. Don't have much more by way of update than that, other than I'm sure Joe informed everybody that typically the first weekend everybody goes home. They have organizational meetings. We don't expect really any committee hearings until probably mid to later part of next week, but we will get most of our policy bills filed by early next week.
Any questions for Mr. Jaramillo? All right, let's move on to B, activities and coordination for upcoming session. Anybody have anything here? I did want to hear from Mr. Hertz and Mr. Minicucci about our internal bill tracking spreadsheet and how that's going. I know we don't have a lot of bills yet, but there are some that have been introduced that were in our legislative priority. So we could go to them, and then if there's other issues anybody else wants to bring up, they can do that afterwards.
Madam Chair, I'll defer to Mr. Hertz. He's been tracking that. Go ahead, Jim.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm happy to bring up the spreadsheet if you would like. I know that our council staff has been, we've got a couple of people that have been tracking different bills and kind of identifying where within, I guess we have both a list of bills that have come up that fall within our resolution and the priorities that have been established, but then we also have identified other bills that kind of fall outside of that priority list that we think that the counselors and administration might find valuable for us to look at. So I'm happy to bring that up if you guys would like.
I would like to see it if, just a brief overview. That'd be great.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll bring that up for you. Is everybody able to see my screen there?
Yes, thank you.
And let me, I know, let me look at, I know I have it zoomed in so everybody can see, but there's a lot on here. So let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so we have it organized here to where we have the list of priorities that were established per the resolution. And then kind of a column that identifies the priority area. We have our, it's a column for the title of bills that kind of fall under those particular priorities that we think or that were established in the resolution. The date of introduction, a link to the bills. And then we have different trackers that we have on our council staff that are looking through that. And so I know that we have a few things listed here under a couple of these priorities, but this is still a work in progress. I know that we're trying to figure out a system within our staff to track everything, and we're still kind of developing that. So I can go through each of the priority areas and identify each of the bills that kind of fall under that, or however you guys think we should try to review those, but there's a lot of material on here.
I don't know if others have a preference, but I'll let them speak up if you want to see more details. Not seeing that. I just wanted to make sure that we were starting the tracking and think through. I know this is like a Google Doc, right? So it's all shared. Just want to make sure everyone knows how to get to it. And then also, Mr. Hertz, if we see a bill that should be listed on here that's not, should we just flag it for you or for Mr. Minicucci or both, or what is a good process for that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if you could go ahead and send it to Mr. Hertz. He's coordinating the spreadsheet, so it goes directly to the coordinator of that one.
And then maybe if you could just maybe re-email out the link to everyone so that everyone has that handy and they can go in and check for bills, you know, on every couple of day basis to see where we're at. That would be great.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm happy to do that. And I think we're trying to figure out, I know that amongst our staff, we have 2 or 3 different folks that are looking at this, and we're trying to figure out the best system for reporting back to the counselors and the administration on that. But yeah, I'm happy to send that out after the meeting, and we'll be sure to continue to track that as best as we can.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Royale.
Madam Chair, I was going to ask a question maybe for our lobbyists, and you're a veteran as well as some of the other counselors of the legislative process. You know, early on in the process, it's fairly easy to manage these sort of things because things are happening a little slower. But as we get to the fury of the last 20 days, things get really hectic. So I guess my question to you and to our council staff is, I'm just want to make sure that all of us are getting the same kind of tracking information from each other. And I'm more concerned about our lobbyists being able to, I don't know if they have their own tracking system that is in line with this one, so that way some of us start relying on one over the other, and then maybe one's not as updated as the other, and then we start thinking that we're not working with each other. So I just wondered about that, just on a practical level.
So, Madam Chair and Mr. Royale, I subscribe to New Mexico legislative reports, but once we enter that last 20 days, Allison from my team will be going around to the committee secretaries on all bills that we're watching on a daily basis to make sure that things aren't popping on schedules. And we'll work closely with you and Mr. Jaramillo and the team so that we aren't stepping on each other in that regard. But I agree with you, like, it's really important for us to be all have the same information.
And just to weigh in on that, I think this is a great start. It'll have to be added to, and to some degree, we'll have to rely on staff with expertise to really flag which ones that come up that are not bills that we're necessarily pushing, but that might impact our issues to flag. And I maintain a list of that, but really I'm with Joe. It's the last 20 days. It's almost impossible to track it by doing anything other than just going to the committee and looking at the wall every day, because even what's often online in terms of what bill is going to be coming up in committee will not necessarily match the amended schedule that's on the wall. And it's really just a matter of being in the building and matching what's on the committee list with what's on our priority list, both in terms of legislation that we're affirmatively pushing, but also legislation that's been flagged as of importance. So I wish there was a better process than that, but things change dramatically in the last 20 days, which is the more crucial part, especially after the time for all bills to be dropped.
Thank you. So let me just back up a little bit on this tracking sheet and the reason that I pushed for it, and I think it was already being planned, but I specifically asked for this because I think it's helpful to have a list of what we said in our overall bill were the citywide legislative priorities, and then know which of those have been translated into actual bills, because we did not have that last year and it was a little confusing for me. And so this tracking was supposed to do two things. Up front, early in the session, just let us all know when our priority topics have been translated into actual bills. And I think that's important throughout because, as we talked about last week, there's some that we all are hearing about a lot, like the Metro Crime Initiative, but there are other bills on our list of city priorities that I want to make sure are on everyone's radar. And so that's the beauty of this upfront tracking sheet is that. And then I agree, as we get further into the legislative session, it gets a little bit more difficult. But for me and for the other counselors, I think having this updated sheet, updated as quickly as Mr. Hertz can, still comes in very handy even through the end. But the last week, it's really, you got to be in the building if you want to have an input on some of these bills. But I think it's important from the very beginning to just know what bills we as a city are tracking.
Madam Chair, if I can just jump in, I know
Yes.
there's a on the state legislative website. I think I've talked to Tom and to Jeff about it, and any counselor can do that as well. It's called I think it's Bill Finder. So you just out a code, you put the bills that you're interested in tracking, whether it's the city priorities or anything else that's of interest to you, and it kind of alerts you as to where your bill is at.
Right. And that's, if you get the bill numbers, right, the bill numbers will be in Mr. Hertz's tracking spreadsheet as they're translated into bills. And then you could create your own daily, update from the legislative website.
Madam Chair, I'll also add that, like you said, it had been planned. What we tried doing in previous years, and then this year, of course, with your help, we've enhanced it. But one of the purposes of the plan was so that when we identified bills that may have had an issue of importance to the city, and it could be from any legislator anywhere, and we would basically flag that, send it out to the counselors, is what our original intent was. And then if any of them said, "Oh, I have an interest in this, we'd like to track it," then we would backtrack to both the administrative team and to the Mr. Armillo and Mr. Thompson, see if we could start tracking it. That was what it was starting out with. And then, of course, Council People Corner came in and said, we also have a couple of other needs we have. And so we kind of enhanced it with that.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Min-
Yeah, Madam Chair. My only reason for asking the question is not that this is not a good tool, so I appreciate the work. And I think your thoughts are welcome as it relates to why this is important. I just want to make sure that as we get close to the crunch time, that we're not all relying on one sheet or have a sheet that's not quite updated as somebody else's sheet, and then we end up with the miscommunications that sometimes happen in our large bureaucracy. And but I do think that at least starting off, it's the right thing to do. So thank you.
Are there any other comments or suggestions or questions around, coordination of this group during the legislative session?
I certainly would like to ask, Madam Chair, is, Joe, is this your elementary school picture, or is that? Or
That's
is
my confirmation photo.
All right, on that note, we're going to move on to item C, report from federal lobbyist, and I believe I saw Mr. O'Donnell on, so I'll turn it over to him. Mr. O'Donnell, you're muted.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. I have just a brief report. Met with Senator Lujan's office and Senator Heinrich's office this week in person to talk about appropriations. And what I heard from Senator Heinrich's office was that this year he is going to be submitting requests by only under his name. So in other words, he will be submitting some requests with Senator Lujan jointly, but what his chief of staff told us was that in order to seek the highest amount of funding for the earmark requests that are priorities from cities or local governments, nonprofits, they are going to be, when you send it in, there's always the option on the form you submit to say, this is being submitted both by Senator Heinrich and Senator Lujan. This year, if you have a very high priority, the suggestion was that you submit it to just one of the senators. They feel that this is a way to maximize the funding for individual earmarks that are requested. We haven't gotten information yet from the House on committee assignments. They were waiting for Republicans to finish their assignments this week. And in a conversation with Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez's staff this afternoon, they expect that next week the Democratic committee assignments will be made for members. There is one thing that I think I forgot to mention the last time, and I was reminded of it today in a conversation with Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez's staffer. And that is that I think, and I'm not sure if it's one, I'm sure it's one of the two congresswomen is, I believe, seeking a seat on appropriations, on the Appropriations Committee. Senator Udall had that seat on appropriations when he was a House member. We have not had a House appropriator since that time. So, and New Mexico has generally had a House member on appropriations. Joe Skeen had that seat on appropriations for a number of years. And then Mr. Udall sort of succeeded him and had a seat. So we always had one on the House side and the Senate side. So I think they're making an effort to try and do that again. That's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions or comments for Mr. O'Donnell? Okay. Is there any other business?
Madam Chair, there's no, I don't know if there's any other business on the other business item, but just so the members know, because we're meeting weekly, we need to, if you have anything you'd like on the agenda, we'll need it by Monday, because we have to get it out Tuesday morning. So that's on the agenda. Next week's agenda, I do believe, Madam Chair, you'd point out that we may require we have to put in, it's the annual time to re-elect the vice chair, or to not re-elect, to have the vice chair election. So that will be on in addition to this one.
All right. Any other comments before we adjourn? Seeing none, I'll adjourn this meeting and see you all next week. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
I was just simply saying thank you very much for stepping up for me, and I apologize for being a bit late.
No problem. Thank you for joining us when you could. We'll see everybody next Friday.